Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my podcast. Today's podcast is entitled You Have to Be in That Place. And as usual, I'm going to start this podcast off with a quote. Taking constructive criticism from others is required to get to the next level. And that's a quote by Wendy Starland. Constructive criticism should be sought instead of shunned. I know that a lot of times people don't like hearing about themselves or hearing that they're doing something wrong, but honestly, those opportunities that people take, whether it's with good intentions or with bad intentions, are opportunities for us to grow. Um, Not every day is going to be a sunny day. Not every situation is going to be favorable, but in every situation, you have an opportunity to grow. And that growth largely is determined by your perspective. Like if it's rain or shine, a plant can look at it, not saying a plant has consciousness, which is a whole nother debate or subject, but just saying from a plant's perspective, if it's sunny outside, it can be like, oh, look how beautiful the weather is. But if it's raining, it could also be like, hey, this rain is great. I really needed it. It hasn't rained in a while. I know that's a funny analogy, but I mean, if you really sit back and think about it, it pushes home the point of perspective. Whether the sun's out or whether it's raining, it doesn't really matter because both can be useful to our process and our growth. The sun gives the plant photosynthesis, which they use to turn into energy, and then the rain helps them to grow by giving them water that they need. All organisms on earth need water. So it's all about perspective. It's all about how we look at things and how we appreciate the opportunity for what it is, and we just learn and grow through it. There are many components to constructive criticism, like what the person's goal is in giving it, how much do they know about you, and does what they are saying come from a place of love and care. This is why we got to be careful about the company that we keep, because not everybody that's around you is for you. Some people might be just saying things to hurt you, saying things to hold you back, or saying things to get you off track. But again, regardless of who it's coming from and how it's coming, we have the power of choice, and we have the power to choose what perspective we hold that criticism in. We can let it be negative or we can let it be constructive. We can use it to build ourselves into a stronger individual, to take that criticism and turn it into a point of focus that we use to better ourselves and strengthen ourselves, so that that weakness can no longer be a point of focus for our enemies or for the people that don't have good intentions. And on the other side, there are people that may say things, but they say things out of love, but maybe they just don't know how to say it tactfully. They're just real blunt or abrupt. Again, the choice is how we perceive the message. So we could take the message and be hurt and totally miss what they're saying, or we could just take it for what it is, say thank you, I appreciate for what you said, and just keep on growing through it. Again, the choice is yours. We have the power of choice, and at the end of the day, it's up to us how we perceive things that happen to us, and whether we give it the connotation or denotation if it's bad or good. But just as important as seeking constructive criticism, we have to be in the right headspace. And what I mean in saying that is that we have to be in the right place and the right mentality to be receptive of what people say to us. We can't always be defensive. We can't wear our ego on our shoulder, that every time somebody, pushes it or flicks it off our shoulder, now all of a sudden we're being defensive and we miss the message or the teachable moment because we're too busy being hung up and trying to show the world that they're wrong about what they're saying about us. Everybody has opinions. They're one in a million. Just because it's an opinion doesn't mean that it's true. You're entitled to have an opinion. If you have an opinion, that's yours and good for you. But that opinion doesn't have to be true. It's only true if we accept it. So, especially from people outside of your circle, outside of your life, who say things about you, but they really don't know who you are. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know how far you've come from who you used to be. Like, when they say things to us, we can choose to give it life, or we can choose to just dead it at that conversation of where it is. because again, you have a choice to carry that on your shoulders or just drop it where it is. So we have to surround ourselves with people, again, that are for us, that are in our corner, that know our history, know that where we've come from and where we're going, and that can see our development and see our growth. And even if they don't, it's not their job to be our cheerleaders. It's not their job to, give us constructive criticism. If they do that, we're more than happy to accept it. And a lot of people don't have that in their lives. But if you do, that's another one up that you have in life. But at the end of the day, all you're going to have is yourself. It's going to be your self-talk that's going to get you through the hard times. It's going to be how you perceive situations that's going to get you through the hard times. It's not going to be what anybody else does or say. It's all on your shoulders. So, and again, a lot of that is our perspective on what happens to us in our lives, our perspective on what people say to us and what people do to us, and how long we're going to hold on to it, or if we're just going to let it go and move on to another point. Being in the right headspace means giving yourself the space and opportunity to free your mind. This gives your brain the time and space to think, to pause, and reflect, so you can get deeply into quality thinking. There is a lot to be said for taking a pause. Just when somebody says something to you, instead of just being so quick to pop off at the mouth or so quick to defend yourself, there's a lot that can be said for just taking a pause. Taking a step back, maybe literally or not so literally, maybe just internally, taking a step back and pausing and thinking about what you're going to say, thinking about what's been said to you, and thinking about how you're going to reply, instead of just replying off the cuff or just off the top of your head, the first thing that comes to mind. Because the reason that we have two ears and that we have one mouth is because we're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. So when you're having a conversation, when somebody's giving you criticism, when somebody's trying to teach you something about yourself or show you something about yourself, you're supposed to listen. You're supposed to take that in. You're supposed to reflect, apply it how it's supposed to be applied, and then you return some type of comment so that your interaction can be fruitful, or that you can get something from it. Because if it just turns into an argument or to a screaming match, then nobody's going to grow. And at the end of the day, just because you yelled or you got mad doesn't mean that the person that you were yelling at or getting mad at is going to leave having any different of an opinion about you because of how you acted. So if at the end of the day, you may not be able to change their opinion, why don't you just take what they have to say, put it in its perspective place in your life, whether you just drop it off or you hold it, use it as fuel, or use it as encouragement to get to where you need to be, and then just go about your business. Some may refer to this as meditation, which is extremely useful for those seeking to calm their minds and have a deeper drive within themselves. I cannot say enough about meditation. Meditation is awesome. There's a million ways to do meditation. There's a million aids out there to help you meditate deeper. And if you don't know how to meditate, there are forums out there and apps that can help you learn how to meditate. I cannot speak enough about meditation. Meditation is awesome when you have time to sit alone by yourself and just calm your thoughts and dive deep into who you really are and ask yourself some tough questions and face those tough questions. But a lot of times we're going to be out in the real world, we're going to be walking around, and we're not going to have time to meditate. We might be able to take some breaths and calm ourselves down and stuff like that, but we won't be able to sit in quietness and just calm our thoughts and be just with yourself. So when you're walking around, you need to you need to be able to master these techniques as well. So taking calming breaths, being able to settle your thoughts, calm your monkey brain and stuff like that. You won't be able to close your eyes and fully relax sometimes, but you'll be able to at least institute those practices, the calming breaths and the controlling your monkey brain. When you notice your brain is starting to go awry and when it's starting to go crazy and all these negative thoughts and thoughts that don't serve you are bouncing around in your head, you could take a breath, 5 seconds in, hold 5 seconds, 5 seconds out, and just do that until you calm down. Get air circulating throughout your body and calm yourself. Put things in perspective. Hey, it's not that bad. I don't know why I'm getting so angry. I don't need to care about what this person thinks anyways. It's only a moment in time. Tell yourself what you got to tell yourself to put yourself in the right headspace for whatever's going on, so that you can act rationally instead of acting out of emotion, which is by and large irrational. And then you can get yourself in trouble by satisfying your temporary need to explode and feel anger. And then that will damage in turn your future or what you may have around the corner in reference to that incident or those individuals that may be involved. Equally as important as meditation is creating that internal environment of being receptive versus defensive. We've talked about this before, about being in a place that, every time somebody says something to you, you're not always ready to pop off. You're not always ready to be defensive. You're not always ready to have an argument. You're not always ready to fight, because no matter how big or how bad you are, there's always somebody on this earth that's bigger and badder. And we see this in UFC, for example. No matter how long a champion stays on top, there's always somebody coming up through the ranks that's going to dethrone them at one point or another. I mean, it's happened to everybody. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson. I mean, everybody. There's nobody that's held a championship or held a belt that just held it forever and nobody was able to knock them off their throne. There's somebody that's going to be able to knock you off your throne. So it would behoove you to be able to master some other skill besides just being able to fight, because fighting won't serve you and you can't fight everybody that you run into or that you have a disagreement with. So being able to communicate, being able to talk, being able to center yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, have control over yourself internally and externally, even though you can't control your situation, is one of the greatest superpowers that we have as human beings. And what that all boils down to is choice, like we've talked about before. We have the choice to choose what perspective we put on things. We have the choice to take a breath, take a step back and pause for a moment to reflect on what we're doing, how we're feeling, what our next step should be. Those are choices we do have. I know it doesn't feel like that when you're in the midst of a situation and you just feel so much anger and so much emotion that you just want to act on impulse. It's just natural that you want to explode. But you do have the choice to step back, to think, and to rationalize with yourself, even amongst all those crazy emotions, about what your next step is going to be. And that's something that I didn't understand as a young man, that I was told by my grandfather. But now as I've gained age, I start to see that, that is extremely possible. That is definitely possible for you to be able to take a step back and pause instead of acting on impulse. Because acting on impulse will get you in a lot of trouble. It has gotten a lot of people in a lot of trouble, and it could get you in a lot of trouble. So it would be best if we take a step back and we just pause and think. And that pause or that hesitation may save your life in the long run, because it may stop you from making a critical mistake. If that criticism can't make it past the ego and hurt feelings, how will we be able to really hear, receive, and understand it in order to learn from it and become better? Basically, what that's saying is, like, if it can't get past your ego, if it can't get past, the macho-ness, the machismo, if it can't get past, the emotions and everything that you have harbored up against the person, if it can't get past all of that, how are we supposed to receive it, internalize it, and then put it in this proper compartment? Meaning that we're going to use it as fuel, that we're going to receive it and take action in reference to it, or we're just going to drop it by the wayside. So again, when we act off of emotion, or when we put emotion into the equation, we're now acting irrationally, because by and large, emotions are irrational. They're not rational thoughts. They don't come from a rational place. Most of the time they come from the heart, and most of the time we're not thinking when we implement the emotion. This goes for good and bad emotions. Sometimes love can make us feel blind. Sometimes we could be so happy in a situation that it makes us feel blind. Definitely when you're angry, you can go blind. Definitely when you're jealous, you can go blind. And all of these things don't serve us because they're irrational at the time. They flood our senses with, perceptions and information that may not be true or accurate at that point in time. And this is why it's so important that we do this pause and that we take a step back and rationalize what we're doing, because the information that we may be receiving at that point in time, or that we may be feeding to ourselves, may not be accurate. And taking actions with inaccurate information is definitely going to lead you to making a mistake in the long run or in the short run. Again, being impulsive is not something that we should partake in on a daily basis. We should learn to be more intentional with our living, more strategic with our living, less impulsive, less irrational, more rational, and more, thinking. It's chess, not checkers. You're not just trying to make moves to make moves. You're always thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, instead of just looking at the immediate and going for immediate gratification. You want to think about the long run, the end game. What's around the corner. How does this serve or not serve my goals or my mission in life? When we are receptive, we are open, aware, awake, and actively receiving what life has to offer us. We are in flow. We are in balance. We are both open and focused, surrendered and engaged. And this is what being receptive does. It allows us to be in a place where we can receive the information that's coming in, where we can be, balanced, where we can be, at our best selves. We can be present. We can be grounded. And when we're all of those things, we're putting our best foot forward instead of being on our heels, being defensive, being combative, being all the things that we don't need to be in order to grow. You can't grow in a place of, tension. Growth is relaxed. At some point in times, you're going to have to fight to grow, and growth can be painful and stuff like that. But by and large, growth can be effortless if you let it. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to, force growth. There will be plenty of opportunities for you to grow if you would just let it happen. If you don't fight it, if you don't put a resistance up against growth, because growth is natural. Nature wants everything to grow. You don't have to think about growing when you come out of the womb, from a baby to a toddler, from a toddler to a preteen, from a preteen to a teen, to a young adult, to an adult. Like, you don't have to think that. That's just nature taking its course. It happens seamlessly. And, that's physical growth. But mental growth is something that we have the ability to halt, or we have the ability to lengthen or shorten. So we're going to have enough walls and hurdles and things in our lives that we're going to have to get over and go through. So why not make things easier? Why not make things work for us instead of against us? Why not usher in the growth instead of resist it and make it difficult? Because you're going to grow anyways. And why not make it as painless as possible? Why make it painful? Why make every lesson a hard lesson? It can't be easier. There is an easier way. And we just have to find out what works in our lives, because a hard head makes a soft behind. That's what my grandfather used to always tell me. When we are in this state, we open up ourselves for the real change and real growth. Again, growth doesn't have to be painful. Every lesson doesn't have to be a hard lesson. You don't always have to get knocked down. Now, there are some times in life that we're going to fall. There are some times in life that we're going to make a bad choice and we're going to have to learn the hard way. But the hard way doesn't have to be the only way that we're learning. Life is a servant. The way life is reflected on our external environment is a reflection of our internal selves. So if it's chaotic inside your body, if it's unstable, if you don't have control of your emotions, if you're not grounded, if you're not present, all those positive things that we talk about that we're trying to build towards, if that stuff doesn't exist internally, then externally you're going to be at war with the world, because you're at war with yourself. So you need to be at peace with yourself internally, mentally, spiritually, physically. You need to have balance, be grounded, be present, be grateful for what you have, no matter what your situation is. And that will be reflected in your outside life. And you'll start attracting, through the law of attraction, those positive things into your life, and those things that you desire and that you ultimately want for your life and for the lives of those around you, like your loved ones and the ones that you have by your side and in your circle. And accepting criticism is something we can best do when we have all of those things on our side, when we're present, when we're grounded, when we're in a place to receive it, when we have the ability to, control our ego, as opposed to let our ego have more control over us. And a better way to put ourselves in this headspace is to practice that pause and to take a step back. And at the end of the day, we're just going to be better for it. As painful as it may be, as uncomfortable as it may feel, because you may be used to operating a different way, like just flying off the handlebars and just being crazy and fighting and fussing. Like there's a better way. There's an easier way. And this may be just that way for you.